Hey everybody, this is Silver Spook, and this is the Silver Spook video about rebellion blindness, why Empire resistance is ignored on Earth, and not so much in outer space. Um, in space, everyone can hear you and see you scream revolution. You know what I'm saying? But on Earth, not so much. It's actually Earth is where it's hard to hear the cries of the oppressed a lot of the time, actually. Anyway, so we're gonna talk about why that is. If you look at just look if you just look at the thumbnail there, you could probably see the reason already, or one of the major reasons. Just look at the left and the right side. What the problem is that the problem is the people on the right, they don't have enough. They don't have enough laser guns. If they had more laser guns, then the people on the right would be way more visible. This. I think the people on the right, they're wearing red hats, and the people on the left, they have like cool brown jackets. That's why. I think that's probably why. Maybe that's it. People on the right, you know, they have like the people on the right, they all tend to have they have like a flag around them, behind them. Some of them, they have like I don't know what it is, huh? I think they have too many trees. There's too many trees. Like this guy got a tree. The people on the left, they don't have any trees. I think that maybe that's it. No. Anyways, yeah, but Rebellion Blind is why Empire Resistance is ignored on Earth. But obviously, Andor is a TV show. You might have heard about that. It's a TV show on the Disney Plus. It's a Disney Star Wars franchise show. Um, and I think that's pretty well known amongst anybody who's going to watch this video. Um, uh, so Holly and I, we did just take a peek at this show. We started watching some of it. I missed the initial launch of season one. Well, we didn't get to it. We were a bit stellar battled out. You know what I'm saying? There were so many Nova fights. Star Wars. In Neofeud 2, there's actually a franchise called Stellar Warriors. That's a beloved franchise of some of the main characters in one of my science fiction video games. So obviously, everybody knows this. Anybody who's, anybody's ever had a screen in front of them, which is not some people who suffer under Earth empires. Some of them haven't had screens in front of them because they don't have any electricity or basic infrastructure, or they don't have access to like toilets. So, anyways, but anybody who does have access to electricity and the internet and computer screens and modern global supply chains, U.S. not so much anymore. Anyways, you get to watch it in a cardboard box and just play imagination with it. Anyway, but if you've seen the TV show, I'm not gonna try to not spoil anything as much as possible if you're gonna watch the TV show. I haven't watched season two. We're just trying to catch up season one. But Andor, I heard a lot about it, and obviously it's a show that set in the Star Wars universe, has Diego Luna, and several other, I think he's probably the highest profile cast member. Um, it has Eric the Viking's daddy, um, the what's his name, the I can never remember the actors' names when I need to. But it has several high profile Hollywood based Swedish, or at least one Hollywood based Swedish actor who is also in Rogue One. It connects Rogue One to Star Wars, the rest of the Star Wars universe. I think as I recall, let me just double check that. Andor is set before the events of Rogue One. It kind of tells the story that leads up to Um, yes, Andor, a Star Wars story, is just launched a second season, and it is a prequel to the original Star Wars film, 77. The series follows thief turned rebel spy Cassian Andor during the 5 years that led to the events of the two films, exploring how he becomes radicalized against the Galactic Empire and how the wider Rebel Alliance is formed. So, like, Andor does directly deal with, well, all of Star Wars deals with Empire in some shape or form. Um, the Empire being like central to the entire show, uh, and all the shows really, and the rebellion against that, right? Because obviously Princess Leia, Luke, uh, Han Solo, and Chewbacca, when they join up with C3PO and R2D2 as a comic relief, the protagonists are always some way, shape, or form against Empire, right? The Empire. So it's just called the Galactic Empire, right? Whether that's episode 4, 5, 6, it's Darth Vader and Palpatine, the Empire. Whether that is Rogue One, obviously, is still the Empire is the main big bad. It's basically always that, with like very few exceptions, unless it's a very, 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 very small story. I guess in the Mandalorian and in Boba Fett, the Empire isn't like always directly like the personal emissaries of the Empire aren't always there, but they are involved, and the ramifications of the Empire are the context for all the problems, right? Bill Burr is like an ex-imperial trying to figure out what to do with himself, but it all has to revolve around the Empire. Right? Without the Empire, like everything in the entire Star Wars universe doesn't really function to a large extent. So anyway, but the Andor is set 5 years before, and so the interesting thing about it, and obviously I haven't watched the entire thing, but like just like from what I gather, is that it deals with the lead up to, it deals with the run up to the Empire. It's very like cloak and daggery. It's very spy. It's very the whole show, I would say at least the first 2 episodes, like definitely the first episode, a lot of it is just people making up cover stories. Like people are speaking to each other. It's like one of those like those, it reminds me of like some of the true detective, true crime, like more gritty cop shows, which I'm not a super big fan of those nowadays for many reasons, but where like the police are trying to get their stories, they're like speaking in the story, right? They're trying to get their story straight about the events of what has occurred. Like in the beginning of the show, like Diego Luna's character, right, like walks into like a cyberpunk themed bar and is basically he's looking for someone. It's unknown who, but nobody's giving any real names. Like everyone is extremely secretive, obviously. It's a shady bar, and then there's like corporate enforcers, police of some kind, in the company town that I forget the planet they're on. But it's the whole thing is like people trying to not divulge information. The Empire's like enforcers, or the Empire, the people that are working with the Empire directly, are not happy with Diego Luna's character, who is like getting more favoritism from a girl at this bar that's working the bar, a working girl with a semicircle afro, interesting science fictional afro hairstyle. Anyway, and so the corporates are trying to like basically bully him around. They're basically gonna shake him down afterwards. There's I won't say, I'll leave it at that. That's enough. But it's a lot of his character is trying to infiltrate. He's trying to infiltrate for his own particular reasons. His character is from a horribly devastated planet and people, the Kenari people, right? That was this terrible disaster happened where the Galactic Empire was mining, and you actually get to see like this huge strip mine. It kind of looks like it looks like a scene out of an Earth Empire's horrible mining. Like in the Congo or like somewhere else in Africa or in South America. It's like a huge strip mine, and then there's a huge disaster caused by the Empire that caused just countless people to die, right? And then there's the remnants of those people are like the descendants of some of the survivor miners are like, it's implied that like they are I mean, I haven't seen the whole entire show, but it's like, you get kind of where it's coming from. Is like the Empire has caused this huge suffering, right? It causes massive evil in the world, that involved resource extraction and mining, right? As empires are wont to do. And so he's a descendant of, he's a survivor of this, right? And now he's everything he has to do, nobody can know actually where exactly he's from, because obviously they found out where he's from. Well, he might be fomenting. That's a word that is used like several times, right? Like the Empire. There's a line by one of the gung ho cops, right? The gung ho's not a stormtrooper, but he is the corporate. I forget exactly their name, but it's like the corporate police, the military. When it comes to Empire, right? It's just the same, right? It's basically their job is to maintain the interest. They pull the triggers. They're the fist of Empire, inside, domestically, and externally, or not. Right, to an Empire, there is no domestic. Really, there isn't technically a domestic and a foreign. Right, it's all theirs. Right, like current Earth empires. That's the way they view the world. Right, that's actually like there's a country that claims the entire planet as its territory, and anyone that violates the totality of the 24,000 mile circumference of the Earth, right? Every inch of Antarctica, every inch of Greenland, every inch of Europe, every inch of Asia, right? Every ounce, every drop of water in every sea, South China Sea, Red Sea, Bering Strait, every inch of water, the entire ocean of the Pacific is theirs, right? So that's another important, that's another thing that can be drawn out of this show. I'm gonna get to why. I promise I'm gonna get to the rebellion and blindness. I just want to not have all the people that are gonna be extremely upset and feel sad about this because they're from the Stormtrooper place quit the video before I get to like 15 minutes. Anyways, so that's why I'm talking about nerd stuff first. So yeah, but it's like it's the corporate enforcers, right? The corporate enforcers say rebellion is being fomented, right? There is trouble being fomented, right? Someone, we don't know who, but there are forces out there. There are entities out there. There's someone out there or in here, in our midst, that are stirring up trouble for us, right? For us, meaning the Empire. And so they're like, so there's a cat and mouse game, right? It is. It's a police and criminal game, right? But then it's kind of, but it's like, but who exactly is the biggest criminal? Those who are resisting galactic level, the biggest evil, or those that are enforcing quote unquote the law on behalf of the greatest evil, right? So I mean at least that does have relevance to the way that empire and colonialism, obviously. When you say empire, it's just like it's whatever people are hearing is different than everybody's heard. But people hear empire, they go, oh, that's like Romans and like that's like Romans and like Russians, and like we would never do that. We just named buildings Empire State just because we just accidentally pulled that word out of a hat. And it's not like we just like accidentally fight colonial proxy wars for resources. And then people just like have people just have, they have, what do they call that, muscle spasms, and just like say that out loud, but they don't mean that. Nobody actually means that coming out of the, you know places that are probably watching this. So um yeah, so it's like that is how it functions, though, to a large extent. I mean, even just like a couple episodes in, the show does a pretty good job of like dealing with at least some of that. And as I point out, like everybody's constantly talking in code, or like people are speaking in the, like Diego Luna's character is speaking to several characters, but one of them is that what is her name? I'm trying to get it right. Cassian Andor, and then there's uh uh she is playing Bix. Yeah, Adria Arjona plays Bix, and Diego Luna's character, he's speaking to her, and like trying to basically trying to get her to give up, or trying to get her to sell him, or trying to get her to get a buyer to buy his product, so he can like basically get out of sight, like get off of the world he's on, because he's in deep trouble. And then when he's talking to his one of, I think his boss, he works as a miner. It's his day job, right? He works in the just an everyday working class blue collar, or science fictional blue collar worker. But everything he's saying is like, this is the story, and then the guy is like changing the story while they're talking about what the story is that they're going to tell everybody. But so everything is very like all lies and all covert operations, because they're being hunted, right? Like, if you're resisting Empire, you have to understand operational security, OPSEC, and things you don't do, and things you do publicly, and things you don't do publicly, because you're not, if you are in the Empire, if you're under the Empire, right, then everything you do can and will be used against you in the court of crime, right? Which is what which is what Imperial courts are for. So so that, like, that the way that plays out is very, it's very like realistic, or it's not necessarily realistic, but it's like, it's very like it explores more in depth like what that sometimes is like, relative to Star Wars A New Hope is great, Star Wars, even 7, 8, 9, 4, 5, 6, these are they're very entertaining to watch, right? Not Fantasy Star. What? Why you give me that? Probably because I was recently playing that game. It's also loosely, actually, heavily inspired by Star Wars. So Star Wars: A New Hope, like, it deals with the character, it deals with Empire, obviously, but it's very much more like it's more like a Lord of the Rings, just like general fantasy. It's like He-Man, or He-Man is like it, I guess. It's just like a farm boy, right? Wants to wants to do something great with his life, and then he goes off and figures out that he's the chosen one, as usual, and joins with a galactic resistance. Like, Princess Leia is probably the most like actually doing something resistance like, and but it doesn't really go into a lot. I mean, I guess like Princess Leia and the Darth Vader back and forth, and she's hiding out from Darth Vader, encoding things, putting secret messages, or encoding things into R2D2. The rebellion is trying to hide and stay out of sight of the rebellion. So like that there is some of that cat and mouse, Empire versus rebellion going on, but it's not quite as gone into as much as as in Andor. So anyways, so that's a positive about the show. The characters are it's much more adult, I would say, because Star Wars is a show for kids. It's not really some people be like, anyway, I'm gonna go into that right now. It's a show for kids and people who should probably, it's a show for kids, aimed at kids. Anybody can watch it, but it's aimed at kids, and some people are a bit childish about it, despite being 40 plus years old now. But anyway, but Andor is actually a bit, I would say, based on what I've seen, like, it's not like R-rated, completely adult only, but it's very much more like, made for people who are slightly more grown up than they were when they were 7 and they saw Empire Strikes Back or Return of the Jedi in the theater. You know what I'm saying? So, anyways, but yeah, so Rebellion and Blindness, why Empire Resistance is ignoring us. So now we'll move on to why Empire Resistance is ignored on Earth, but it's visible in space, right? Why is resistance to imperial entities so it's celebrated, right? It's viewed as some kind of it's not celebrated, but it is celebrated. It's celebrated. It's cheered for. There's that whole meme, right? Let me see if I can find it really quickly. What is it? The Matrix. Yeah, there's a one meme, right? You know what I'm talking about, right? You watch V for Vendetta and you supported the resistance. I'm not sure which one. And is the internet broken? No. Yeah, here it is. Yeah, Elon himself even tweeted it out, which is hilarious. You watched Hunger Games and sided with the Resistance. You watched Star Wars and sided with the Resistance. You watched The Matrix and sided with the Resistance. You watched Divergent and sided with the Resistance. You watched V for Vendetta and sided with the Resistance. When it's fiction, you understand. Yet you refuse to see it when it's the reality you're living in. And so it's kind of like, interestingly, like obviously this is a post that was, I think this might be the original poster. And like it was, made by somebody that is actually not a Western person, not an American person. I mean, a lot of people have Palestine flag now, but many people are not at least supporting that resistance, which is good. But there's more than that in the world happening, though, obviously. So, but there is a tendency to always see resistance, and for people to picture themselves as part of resistance when it's in a fantasy and fictional, science fictional, speculative fictional, non real world scenario, right? And by people, I mean people from people who have had access to much of the world's wealth disproportionately. I would say that, right? It's different in like a lot of other places, but it's certainly in like places like the U.S., right, and Western countries, these movies, they do celebrate the resistance, right? And then there is a lot of resistance to seeing the resistance, when it's in the reality that people are living in, right? And so like obviously there's an elephant in the room I'm not mentioning for a while, right? But I'm gonna come to it now. One of the main reasons is that it's difficult to for the people that like have access to all the things that they need, right? They have some people are like having less of that in some of these countries like the US, but you still have access to electricity, right? Otherwise you wouldn't be watching the stream, right? Many people wouldn't be watching their videos, right? So even if you're like, oh my God, watching the fall of the empire I'm in, right? Like, yay, from inside the empire and crying. It's like, if you have electricity to tweet that or to blue sky that or to, YouTube video that, then it could be worse, because you could be in the dark, like many people are still, with no electricity at all, right? And no devices to be posting that to, like, so for people who have access to like reasonable wealth and resources and the minerals that empires mine that go into the electronics, right? And the house, and go into electronics, go into the houses, go into the roads and the bridges and the cars, right? And the modern society that people live in, the developed society people live in, right? Like there is a lack of need of resistance amongst the more privileged classes, right, inside an empire, which is where a lot of these people are. Not all of them. Sometimes you could be privileged not in an empire. It's possible. Not in the West, but there are places like that. But there's not really a desire to face the reason why people don't see that, obviously, or maybe not obviously. Reason why these people don't see the Earth resistance is because the entire quality of life that people on the Death Star, or as I like to say, on the Star Destroyers, right? The people that are in the privileged imperial countries, right? Unfortunately, their livelihood has, especially the very privileged, the middle to upper class, to the extent that they still exist, their life, and they're the ones who disproportionately consume a lot of this kind of science fictional fantasy content. Those people, because they tend to have a college education, some of it's a bit more complex than like just say like just some random network TV, let's say. And so those people who consume these kind of like nerdy shows and movies, they don't really want to face, right, the reality that they're watching movies about resistance against a horrible empire while sitting in suburbs on the real Earth Death Star, right? Like some people ask, like, oh, how can we support the West Asian people that are suffering imperial mass unaliving, right? Let's boycott this and boycott this, and obviously, like, all those things that are being boycotted, is good to do that, right? Not saying it's like bad to do that. But some people are like, oh my gosh, we have to boycott Xbox. I heard that one that was like recently because Microsoft is involved, and they are obviously, But the reality is that, like, asking like on a grand scale, like on a focused campaign to like stop a particular mass child ceasing to exist. I'm trying to say this a way that the Empire won't crack down on my stream right now, but like, in a way to say how can I shop in America or in Canada or in France or in Britain or in Australia? How can I shop ethically so I don't support imperial horror on places around the world, right? That's like asking while you live on the Death Star, right? Like, let's say you go to work and you're an engineer on the Death Star, or maybe your cousin actually is a stormtrooper. Your mom, she is an accountant on the Death Star, right? Your brother is, right? And you're like, you go to, you go to Captain Phasma University, right? And your sister is like, getting a job. She like sells Girl Scouts cookies and is also an environmentalist on the Empire's environmentalist club, right? Because real Earth empires have environmentalists, like they have vegans. Real Earth empires, they have elections. They have at least 2 parties, sometimes 3 or 4 or 5. Real empires have green parties, right? Real empires have, they have people have different religions. Real empires say things like, "This is not who we are," right? Real empires have people that believe they're the freest people, while they're trapped by oligarchies. That's what real empires are like. That's one of the problems of Star Wars and these fantasy empires, is that it's not actually realistic to how these things are, how they function, like in that way. In like in the nitty gritty, right? Of like, the cat and mouse stuff, like that's, some of that's like actually, that's fairly accurate, but like in the way that empires actually are, they don't have, everybody wears gray all the time and they march in a line. Real empires have rainbows. Real empires, some of the time they have rainbows on the side of their destroyers. They have a lot of color, right? They like to bring people in, like the general, the black American general who is calling for and going to lead an invasion to crush a rebellion against an empire in Africa. It's called Burkina Faso and Ibrahim Traore, right? So real empires are much more diverse. I think that's actually why, like, between episode 7, when Flynn's character, played by John Boyega, right, he's a black stormtrooper who defects. A lot of the people who are working on that, and a lot of there's a lot of crackdown on that, I think, because I think there's people that were writing and directing. I forget exactly who was involved, but like that was a little too close to home, right? Because that is really how Empire really works, right? Real Earth Empire in the modern world, in the 21st century, late 20th, 21st century, that's how it works, right? It's not people who work on the people who work on the Earth Death Star and benefit from the Empire, right? They have air conditioning, they have houses, right? They have easy jobs in offices. In finance, in real estate, and marketing, and all this kind of stuff. They don't have to work. Some of them, right? They have all the food and all the products and all the mall shopping they want, right? All the Amazon wish list they want, right? They always picture Empire as this very specific thing, right? These certain very specific certain people. Usually, they're kind of like the bad guys in World War II, and it's only those people specifically. And that's Empire is 1940s fascism. That's it, right? Or Star Wars is actually just about fascism. And when I say fascism, what we mean, right, from the perspective of people who have privilege in Death Star, they want to project it onto this really specific, right? Really specific part of Europe, really specific kind of people we are not like them, right? We're this other thing, right? We're a new thing, right? We're called the moderate liberal, very diverse, very progressive order, right? And that's what real empires are like. They tell themselves these stories, right? And I think that's why 7, 8, 7, after episode 7, there was a crackdown. John Boyega's story, he was actually supposed to get, become closer to, he was more central to his story. His black defected stormtrooper, and then also Ango was going to get together with Rey. It was a white woman and a black guy, and that pissed off a lot of people for reasons, obviously, too. But actually, I think something very important, one of the things that is often overlooked is that modern empires require people, right, to believe in themselves. Modern empires require stormtroopers, the members of the empire, to believe that they are the best, most upstanding, morally righteous. We're very rules based. We're very democratic. We love human rights. We do human rights. We have some flawed people. This one party. That's not who we are. Those are some weirdos, right? But we, the empire, we're not like that, right? And so empire is always rebellion blind, because in order for an empire to exist in a modern world where there are powerful countervailing forces to empire, the empire requires, and that actually are moral, right, and actually aren't doing this the greatest evil in the world of enslaving, extracting, destroying the environment, extracting resources, causing mass suffering of particular people, of particular shades, from particular places, despite a handful of them making it to high places like President Obama or the black general who's been on TV this week. And so the empires always, especially modern empires, have to always blind their own people and try to blind the world to what it looks like, right? And that's why, like, the Donald Trump administration seeks to go back to 19th century, 1800 style, right? I'm not saying empire always functioned that way. I'm saying like post World War II empire functions in this way. Pre World War II and definitely like 1800s empire, less relied on that. It did do brainwashing. It did lie in narrative. It told stories about how the people who suffered under empire were throwing spears at each other, and they were all just savage, right? That was some lies and brainwashing. But it's different from the post World War II empire, which says we are the most moral and upstanding, and we you know, there are some noble savages out there, and there's this poor people out there, and they don't deserve this horrible treatment. We don't really know where the treatment is coming from, right? That's what modern empire is like. We don't know why people are starving in Africa, Latin America, Asia. We don't know why people are suffering these wars, but we're here to help. You know, in the 1800s, like, people in Africa, Asia, and Latin America are suffering because they're backward, and we're here to take over because we're better, because we're Britain, France, etc. Right? So that's how old. That's Trump wants to go back to that, and that's backfiring because it's not the 1800s. Because countervailing forces do exist, and they're saying we're not going to call you back. In fact, have fun with no Walmart products, Amazon products that we make. Have fun with 50% of your medicinal supplies and 90% of your pharmaceuticals. Everything in your hospitals. Get ready for your hospitals to shut down. So Empire, if you want to play games with us, the resistance is saying, the real Earth resistance is saying, the strongest Earth resistance is saying, Empire, if you want to play games with us, you won't have any semiconductors, cars, basic consumer goods. You won't be able to fix a car. You won't be able to get your small business hot sauce or computer or General Electric products. Nothing will function in your society, and you will collapse and you will die. And when you get over the fact that it's not 1800s anymore, then you can give us a call, right? That's the way that that's the way that's the state. But part of the reason why I think that actually is directly related, right? Donald Trump, he doesn't know how to do this thing. He doesn't know how to pull the wool over the eyes of his own people and of the world. He doesn't want to. He doesn't know how to do the rebellion blindness that's required for empire resistance. That's required to control the resistance to empire on the earth, right? And so, right, because if he did, I mean, like Biden, I mean, this is not. That's why I say it's not. I'm not like pro Biden. It's actually bad. The longer the empire continues, the longer the greatest evil continues, right? And so the Democrats tend to be better at this, right? The conservatives are the party of 1800s empire, and the liberals are the party. Certainly, American Democrat liberals are the party of 21st century empire, right? Well, what would succeed? What can partially succeed a bit longer, maybe? And so anyways, so I feel like I've danced around the topic long enough. Now let's get straight into it. Yeah, but so why is it ignoring Earth? I mean, when I talk about, let's be a bit more specific. What am I talking about? Now that I've given some time to let that cook. If I just turn it, so I'm all I get is stuff related to this, which is probably a good thing. But I kind of only get the same news over and over and over. Here's just some random update. Burkina Faso civilians sleep at every roundabout at night just to protect President Ibrahim Traore. This is according to Wodamaya, a Ghanaian YouTuber who just spent more than 2 weeks in Burkina Faso this month. And just to get to this specific topic of what's happening now, if you know who is, full disclosure, I had a YouTube video removed just because I made a song about the face on the bottom right, second from the bottom right, I'm scared to even say what that guy's name is because the YouTube actually like removed my entire video just because I made up a song about him. And they come up with bogus reasons why to remove it. It's like, oh, it was violent. And it's like, you got footage of like mass violence all over the place on this platform. The answer is that because the U.S., they were trying to get rid of a lot of rebellion voices like Africa Stream, many African accounts, authentic African voices, not in-house slave voices. And they were hunting down anybody talking about that guy on the bottom left. His name starts with a G. and it kind of rhymes with coffee. Um, and and he was an actual resistance person, and the U.S. and France imperialists like Hillary Clinton, and NATO, they bombed his entire country in the Stone Age, massively devastated and impoverished everyone. It's a horrible, mass violence filled wreckage where it used to be universal health care and housing, and they tortured him to death, and they filmed it. The United States and France and the West did, and if you talk about that, then the U.S. will delete your videos. And they tried to get rid of Africa Stream because the U.S. the real Earth empires don't want Africans talking ever, unless they're saying things that that's why the Star Wars. I think that's a big reason why they got rid of Star Wars, or they tamped down the Finn storyline in Star Wars because it was a little too close to how the U.S. actually operates. So, anyways, but let's get into the and obviously I'm speaking from a Native Hawaiian perspective. Like, this is a Kanaka Maoli flag. It's not actually this country of Hawaii flag, but I do speak as somebody under an Earth empire. I've talked at length on this. One of the big updates. We'll come back to that. Actually, where's my little thread? I have my little thread here. See if I can find that one. It is Merry Monarch Week this week, which is a week of Hawaiian cultural celebrations, especially particularly the hula. Speaking of cultural resistance of the indigenous peoples against imperial colonizers. So let me back up a bit, because some people might not know about this. I don't know where. I feel like a lot of algorithms are not going to be sharing this kind of stuff. It's probably particularly coming to me, so I'm trying to figure out where I need to start with this. But long story short, I talked on a couple streams in the last 6 months about actual decolonial changes being made by actions of African people of various countries in Africa, predominantly. And one of those is Captain Ibrahim Traore. You might have heard about. I think he's coming on the U.S. and Western mainstream news now. I think he was on. I think there's talk about Burkina Faso on CNN. I think Donald Trump made a comment about it. The president of France has definitely, and France has not been blasting it 24/7, but they have drawn attention to it. So, but just a little bit about this. Hands off Burkina Faso. Okay. The United States, through AFRICOM, has accused Captain Ibrahim Traore of using Burkina Faso's gold reserves for personal protection rather than the welfare of its people. This accusation, presented during a U.S. Senate hearing, is a blatant attempt to undermine Burkina Faso's sovereignty and control over its natural resources due to their imperialist greed. Under Captain Traore's leadership, significant reforms have been implemented to ensure transparent management of national wealth, particularly from mining to fund essential public services and benefit the majority, not foreign investors. We therefore condemn the West's continued interference in African nations' affairs and their attempts to control our resources. The EFF, this is from the EFF, which is the South African, also anti-colonial, anti-imperial party. Okay, the EFF supports Captain Traore's efforts to reclaim Burkina Faso's gold for the benefit of its people and to resist neo-colonial pressures. So, that's just what is actually happening in the world right now. There's a big April 30th worldwide. Africans worldwide, including African Americans and Africans in the diaspora, right? But also Africans in Africa, are calling for a mass day of action, and so that's the basics of what's happening. Now, there's a lot more to say about this. I've done like entire Twitch streams where I mostly focus on, not him just. There's a group called the Alliance of Sahel States, or the AES, that is actually really doing decolonization, taking control of the country's resources, using the resources of the country, right? Gold, uranium, coltan, copper, lithium. I mean, it's very lithium is more in Bolivia, where the U.S. and the West, and Elon himself said, we will coup whoever we want, and we'll do imperialism. Elon said, we will do empire wherever we want, deal with it. He publicly said it on Twitter. And that's why we love Elon and Trump, these clowns. I like to say, Trump and Elon, these are the people that like they pilot the Death Star while drunk driving. You know what I'm saying? And it's great because they're gonna crash it into them. They crash it into all their other star destroyers, right? That's called EU and Japan and Canada all like, freaking out and about facing all their vassals, right? All their imperial outposts are getting smashed up by them, and it's you love to see it. You love to, as a colonized person, you love to see it. I mean, as a middle or upper class person from the West, maybe you're not happy to see that. And then that's why this is not who we are. We're not those people. We're somebody else. We're, uh, appeal to ignorance, appeal to neutrality, appeal to invisibility, right, is where people go to, and just just mostly just copium, infinite copium production. Anyway, okay, so let's move on. So if black faces, so the one thing is that this is what's happening. And if black faces in high places worked, then Obama, Colin Powell, and Will Smith would have brought about liberation, right? But all it's done is perpetuate neo-colonial empire. A non-white pope. This is talking about the pope specifically, because they're talking about inaugurating, bringing in a new pope, as the Pope Francis recently passed away. But all it is done is to perpetuate neo-colonial empire. A non-white pope will only tighten the colonizers' religious shackles. This is from an African perspective. Africans need to focus on our own spirituality and empowerment of our people rather than the papacy. What would a black pope achieve for Africans in our homeland and diaspora? Nothing. We see the likes of Obama, Langley, Powell, Rice. All of them were Africans in high places. What did they achieve for us? Let's focus on the collective, not on individuals. I will not even go into the history of the papacy and people of Afro descent. It is not necessary for present purposes. Anyway, so they're looking at a black pro-imperialism pope, and they're looking at a Chinese anti-China pro-US pope. That's the two popes they're currently looking at. All the imperialists are involved in choosing the new pope right now. They want their best guy in charge, somebody that looks like the global majority, black and Asian. Those are the two of the biggest. But does their bidding. So it's literally, that's what's happening right now in the Vatican, which, as I pointed out last week, is the inheritor of the Holy Roman Empire. So speaking of future empire, space fictional empires like Star Wars, then there's Earth empires like the current one that you're probably watching from, and then there's historical empires that continue to this day, like the Holy Roman Empire, which is a descendant of the Roman Empire, which is still inherent in the Catholic Church, in Italy, in Rome, and its connections to NATO, the United States, and the collective West. And so that's where that comes together. And so many of Africa is saying we must protect our leader. It's not because like there's something particular to him specifically. There's not like he is Superman, he will save all of Africa, but like what he represents or what he fights for and what might replace him is what is really the danger. Like other people obviously could lead that are of the same politics, right, and of the same commitment. But it's so that's really what this is about. It's not so like everybody loves him because he's good looking. Everybody loves him because he's rich. Actually, the U.S. keeps claiming, the U.S. and its black generals keep claiming that this Ibrahim Traore is using all of Burkina Faso's gold for his own personal coffers or something. He actually mandated, he's taking like a less than $50,000 salary. He mandated a freeze or a pay cuts and or freezes on every single government salary, right? Like Doge is a joke that's just about Elon, Trump, and their billionaires pocketing as much of America's cash as they crash the U.S. Titanic, right? The Burkina Faso government is what actual efficiency would look like, right? Not just efficiency, it's the government doing what's right for the masses of the people, right? Which is to, right, empower the people and use the resources of the country to build housing, right? To feed the people, to increase their living standard, right? And he is himself taking it's like 30 something thousand a year. He's taking nothing. He said any government official that is asking for a raise should be investigated. That's like how serious it is, right? He's like really. He said they're really enforcing, right? It's actual efficiency. He said any private business person who wants anyone who is engaged in private business cannot work for this, Ibrahim Traore's government, because we don't want private business, right, corrupting the government, right? That's why this whole Doge thing is a joke. It's you have the richest business private people trying to privatize the whole U.S. government, talking about efficiency, right? This, that's where the West is at. Not that the Democrats are any better. They were more efficient at keeping the grift going without making it look so laughably criminal, right? And so it's just the current administration it's kind of great. Like, yeah, no, just be who you are publicly. Be America, be the West, be your criminal self, disgusting self publicly. But like, if you want to talk about actual efficiency, this government is actually making the government efficient for the people. Now, the U.S. government is efficient for making oligarchy, billionaires, doing imperialism, destroying the entire planet, sucking all the resources into one place, and making as much money and brainwashing the entire planet to believe capitalism and colonialism and this Caucasoid supremacy based system where Swiss chocolate is worth 20 times more than anything coming out of African, Ghanaian cocoa, and right. Nigerian leather is worth 1/100th what Italian leather is, despite Italy stealing all of Africa's leather and putting a made in Italy stamp on it. And a Chinese Hermes bag is worth 1,000th what French Hermes bag is, just because of white supremacy, right? That real white supremacy is when you think in your head luxury equals Euroid, right? That's the actual white supremacy. Not like, oh, I went out and I didn't go out in public and call a black person an N-word, although they do that in many parts of the world. The real white supremacy is this insidious fact that, like, if you imagine a bag and that has a European logo on it, and oh my God, that must be worth $20,000. Oh, it has Versace. Oh my God, it has Gucci. Oh my gosh, it has Hermes. Oh my, it was in the Paris Fashion Week, right? Exact same bag. You put a Chinese name, a Chinese label on it, and it's worth like, oh no, that's cheap. That's worth nothing, right? It's exactly the same bag, right? What is luxury? Luxury is racism markup. That's all it is, right? And so that's where, that's what the West does, right? That's part of the game, right? That's what a lot of marketing is, just to maintain the facade that things made by designer, which is to say empire brands, it's imperial marketing. Western marketing is imperial consciousness manipulation, right? That's what much of the West does, right? And then there's financial manipulation. That's what everybody does in Wall Street and London and Paris, the banking and the corporate sector, which is playing games with people's money, finance, insurance, real estate, subprime mortgages, you name it, BlackRock, private equity, all this nonsense. That's all imperial finance. There's imperial brainwashing, the news, right? And then there's imperial military, which is going around and killing innocent people, taking all their stuff, right? And giving it all to private corporations. And so, efficiency, America is efficient at doing horrible, evil stuff to benefit a tiny minority of people through the imperial system. Burkina Faso's current government, Ibrahim Traore's government, and Mali and Niger are efficient at using the resources on the land in which people are democratically, because those people live there, that's their land, and using the resources of their people to empower the collective, all the people there, to have their needs met and not have the resources sucked off to an empire, right? Through Andor strip mining, right? The real Andor strip mining is going into Burkina Faso and having impoverished black children working their butt off, or people, or in Congo for just a barely enough to eat, in return for 99% of all their gold or the coltan or whatever Congolese resource to be sucked out to the empire, right? That's the real empire, but you don't see that, right? You don't in the West, in the empire, you don't see that, and they don't want to show anybody that, right? They show people Andor, They show people Star Wars, right? So that Western stormtroopers can dream about one day resisting something. But this is the thing: is Empire has a tendency to create sloth and emptiness and malaise. It creates a kind of anxiety because humans are not like made to benefit from the suffering of massive other people and have no purpose in their life except to do high frequency trading algorithm programming for Goldman Sachs or BlackRock, right? That people feel anxious about that. That's why they have to watch shows about rebellion so they can feel like they have a purpose to their life, right? Because you don't have one when you live and work in the Death Star. You don't really have a purpose. You don't. That's why you have to attach themselves to indigenous struggles to have this kind of vicarious feeling of having meaning in their life, right? Because if all you're doing is you're doing marketing, you're making marketing ads, about how Hermes bags are the best in the world, and you kind of know that something's wrong with all of that because all the resources are stolen. It's not even made in France, right? It's just basically racism marketing. You don't have a purpose in your life. You don't. You're the bad guy. So you need shows about how good you are so that you can keep showing up to work and not like blow yourself away or just give up on life and kill yourself, right? Like Aaron Bush though was like, well, I am going to resist the empire that I am in, and I'm going to use the end of my life because I don't see a way to fight on the other side except with extreme difficulty. Like the best thing I can do is to take my own life and to scream, free Palestine, right? Stop the imperial destruction of this people to maintain an important Death Star, right? That's what the U.S.'s pet project there is. It's an unsinkable aircraft carrier. It's an unsinkable Star Destroyer. It's an uncrashable Star Destroyer that seems to be crashing now because the U.S. and the West is crashing. So, right? But that's why there's always going to be rebellion and blindness, in the empire, right? I mean, there's the other non-empires can make Battle of Lake Changjin. Empires have to make science fiction shows about South American indigenous struggles and African anti-colonial struggles, because everybody is the bad guy in their country, right? Even if they don't want to be, you simply are. Again, it's like how do I boycott, defense, and sanction from global imperialism living in America? Everything you shop, everything you buy, every tax you pay, everything you do supports it. Like you are the blood of the empire. You are the blood cells of the empire. So actually, Aaron Bush. I mean, it's very sad, but apart from like take everything you have possible and like try to stop it any way you possibly can, there isn't a way to shop on the Death Star that does not empower the empire. There is no way. There is no place you can like. How do I buy brick? How do I shop? Like it's like even coming to Hawaii. That's why I have a whole thread on Hawaii specifically. I'm like, how do I visit Hawaii in a way that doesn't benefit the U.S. empire against Native Hawaiians, right? Let me see if I find it. I just think I swore a lot in that one. You know what you can do, right? As a Native Hawaiian, I'm begging you not to vacation to. I made it start a long time ago, but it's still irrelevant. I'm begging you not to vacation to Hawaii because our homes are burned in Lahaina. The U.S. military poisoned our water. My home in Hawaii as a Native Hawaiian may become uninhabitable soon due to overuse. We don't need these crappy jobs. We need our home and our water stay home, right? Like this. Like how many times people like me gotta say this kind of stuff? If you follow my channel for a while, you've seen this before. What you can do is get your U.S. military withdraw, get your Empire Star Destroyers, get your Empire's TIE Fighters, your F-16s, get your Empire Stormtroopers, your U.S. military soldiers, Navy, Army, and Marines to withdraw. I mean, that's what you could do if you can. Obviously, you can't because you don't have a democracy. The majority of America wants less military. They don't want U.S. doing military excursions abroad, but you can't stop that because you don't live in a democracy. You live in a brainwashed, believing we're the good guys, right? Or at least we Democrats, or we whatever you think is the right side. We conservative. We the good conservatives, or we the good liberals. We the good whatever progressives or whatever, right? So you can't do that because you never realize that you live in the empire. Because real empires don't look like the Star Wars Empire. Like I said, real empires have democracies. They have conservative and liberal parties. They have progressives. Real empires have Bernie Sanders. Real empires have Bernie Sanders and AOC. Right? Real empires have black generals. And then, you know, it has various people of various shades clapping for them and going like, yes, exactly. We need to invade Burkina Faso and that will save Africa because we are not racist, and we're gonna save Africa by invading Africa, right? That's what real empires are like. They're not like the Star. That's a major problem with Star Wars franchise is it doesn't resemble real empire. So, but that's what you can do. You can get your U.S. military to draw, get your U.S. political class to stop sucking Hawaii dry. 99% of all hotels are owned by non-Hawaiians. So that's send our orgs. You can send Silver Spook games, buy Silver Spook games like Neofeud, like Decolonators, which is about fighting empire. Directly to support us on Ko-Fi. Patreon support indigenous, anti-colonial, anti-imperial Hawaiians like myself. That's what you can do. You can't visit Hawaii though, because we don't control any of our resources, right? That's what I'm trying to say with him. The reason why the United States and the collective West, France, are all ganging up together, progressive, left, Democrat, Republican, are all saying we all got to invade Burkina Faso. We all got to invade Burkina. The only people that is against it is like anti-imperial Africans and their supporters like anti-imperial indigenous people like me. And Africans, like the non-puppet Africans in Africa that are going to come out by their millions to stop this, right? But the entire empire, which is left, right, and center, American, white, and some of them are not, but they just believe that they're brainwashed by the U.S. and they benefit from the U.S. Middle and upper class privileged or wannabe middle and upper class temporary embarrassed millionaire American, Canadian, and European and the collective West are all the Francophone, Anglophone, and the Spaniard phone world. A lot of it is all trying to get rid of him, precisely because he wants to take 99% of the gold of the agriculture. They're growing onions. I'm trying to grow onions right now. So shout out to Ibn Chirwari, our two colonized people trying to grow onions. He made Burkina Faso the largest onion producer in Africa. It's amazing. So the chick is just like dug up a bunch of our onions, but we still got some of them going. So food sovereignty is very important for this. So if Hawaii had now Africa, Burkina Faso is having majority of their gold benefiting Burkina Faso, right? If Hawaii had the majority of Hawaii's tourism was Hawaiian owned and $20 billion a year was coming to feed, house, and clothe and build housing and give free healthcare to Hawaiians, oh, that would be great. Then you could shop. Then you could come to Hawaii, right? Then you can come to Hawaii, and I wouldn't be over here with the rest of us Native Hawaiians saying, please stop. But the reason is not because tourism is just like absolutely in just like a cosmic sense. Tourism is bad because when people fly on planes, that's like evil, man. Like when you go in the sky, you get closer to the sun, and the sun is like a Cthulhu death god, and you're like worshiping. Right? There's a whole video I recently just came across, and I shared it. It's called what the hell was it called? It was a whole video called the sustainability class. Shoot, I'm just gonna try to grab it real fast because it's actually directly relevant to this. Why you have rebellion blindness, right? But this video it's called the sustainability class versus working class environmentalism. And I would say also like global South environmentalism, the colonized world environmentalism, right? Global majority environmentalism. But it has to do with, using environmentalism as a way to gentrify, push out marginalized, poor, mostly non-white people, immigrants, communities, to gentrify, to boost, middle and upper class imperial beneficiaries, right? The bourgeois classes, while they think of themselves as vegan, as environmental, but it's really about just making massive property value increases in Toronto and Vancouver and Honolulu too. This happens there, and it's about laundering the guilt. It's laundering the guilt through this veneer of fake environmentalism. Like everything you have is based upon plundering and destroying the earth through the capitalist system, right? As an imperialist capitalist, or not a unmentioned imperialist capitalist vegan or environmentalist or sustainability worker or degrowther or whatever these things, but these are about laundering. This is more empire blindness, right? It's about saying we're green, like we can do green empire, like we can have more solar powered aircraft carriers. Like you're not gonna have any. The USS Harry Truman just got blown up and destroyed by the poorest Arab country, Yemen, and they got Mach 18 hypersonic missiles and just gave up already. Okay, but that's still, it's still part of the narrative. We're gonna liberate the world as liberal, democratic, progressive, environmentalist, vegan. We're very moral. We have like very sophisticated ideas about how we're gonna, regreen this, overpriced skyscraper by putting like some flowers outside of it. We're gonna have lots of conferences in upstate New York. We're gonna have a lot of nonprofits and NGO complex expand, and that's all part of empire blindness. They have a real important function, which is to keep the few hundred million imperial stormtroopers believing they're good people, or they're part of some kind of good project, right? A lot of it is the YouTube video essay class. I'm sorry, but some of them, not all of them. But hashtag not all stormtrooper YouTube video essayists. As long as you start Civil for Patreon, you can make, very Caucasoid video essays, and you won't your imperial karma will not accumulate. I'm just kidding. But we do appreciate all the support that we get. But it's like it's a real thing. Like it's part of how empire continues. And coming back to the current moment, as I was saying, so if you were able to, then you could get your U.S. military to withdraw. That would be something you could do. But obviously, the United States would have to have a democracy, which would require much more intense change than any election can possibly, create, right? Because this is unanimous, all parties, right? So, but the reason why, and obviously you can support us, Oahu Water Protectors. There's Aina Momona. Just if you want people to support and to follow, these are all good organizations to actually doing work that helps, right? So, but vacationing in Hawaii, 99.9% of the entire tourism industry is owned by foreign corporations, right? It's kind of like if people are saying, I'm going to boycott Xbox and Microsoft because they're complicit in GENOCIDE in West Asia by an empire, right? Or an imperial complex. And then you talk about flying to Hawaii. It's like, well, what was the point of boycotting that? Everything you do in Hawaii in tourism is 100% oppressing us, right? Because you're empowering these corporations that are on our stolen land, caused all these problems, illegally occupied our country since the 1890s, are part of why over 50% of us are forced to leave our own land, and we have the worst quality of life and the highest incarceration rate of any demographic, Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders. It's even above the black population, which is very bad, right? So there's no way to get out from that. You cannot ethically consume tourism under U.S. empire occupation that controls the economy of Hawaii in a way that doesn't participate in our imperial oppression, right? And so, that's the same thing. How can I ethically buy Burkina Faso gold like before you burn? The answer is you cannot. It's like, how can I ethically consume Congolese minerals that goes into my phone and my vape? The answer is you cannot. That's why people say just try to not buy new phones, because any phone you buy is going to be coming out of minerals from that place, right? Or, how can I ethically buy Ghanaian cocoa without oppressing Ghana? Well, I mean, it's all sold through Switzerland, which steals their cocoa under imperialism and marks it up 20 times and sells, Swiss branded chocolate, and Ghana gets 1%, and Switzerland and Europe and wealthy corporations and individuals there get 99%. So you can't. How do I support Burkina Faso by buying their gold? Before this point, you couldn't, right? How can I support? Let's think. What's the country that's How do I support Ivory Coast by buying Ivory Coast products, right? Under colonization, you cannot, because colonizers are sucking the resources out and then selling it back to the world. Like there are countries in Africa where the country in Africa is making like millions of pounds of an agricultural product, like a wheat or a rice or milk or something, it's exported to Europe. Right next door is somebody who's making lots of minerals or gold, or they're producing lots of some resource, right? The export from the African country A goes to Europe, it goes to Canada, it goes to Australia, right? And then it gets re-imported to another African country at 20 times the rate. But they're so the goods are being taken out of Africa, put in a Western white country, and then sold back to African countries next door for 20 times more, right? I mean, that is how empire functions, right? That is what the Alliance for Sahel States is trying to stop, right? That's actual decolonization. That's what it actually looks like, right? And that's what empire blindness is trying to get you to think. Oh, empire. Finding empire is when, you know, a white guy from Mississippi or something. One day he'll pick up a gun and shoot at a Trumpian or a Bidenian fascism or something, right? That's just this is nonsense. That's not what actual empire resistance looks like, right? Or it's just like empire is something in space far away from me. There's none of this around because I'm in a really good country like America or Britain or some European country or Japan or Canada. I'm a country that's never done and will never do any empire anytime. We're all very moral, right? And but that's what it's actually like. So, and that's also why, let me see if I can find that. That's my link. There's a list of yeah. So that's why they want hands off of Burkina Faso. Or we should all want that. We should all support that. Let me see. Let me just in this bookmarks list, I got a bunch of them. So yeah, so I talk about onions. So Burkina Faso under Ibrahim Traoré is now one of the largest onion producers this year. This is the kind of leadership Africa needs. One that invests in agriculture. If you're in Africa, instead of importing onions from India, import from Burkina Faso. So shout out. I mean, growing onions is actually like it's fairly easy. It should be fairly easy. I guess we'd have a bunch of success. We're actually going corn and onions. We're experimenting with a whole bunch of new foods to support the Silver Spoon Cooperative food security. If all the imported goods from China and the world dry up, I mean, we're not importing that much food from China. The tractors and all of the agriculture machinery requires Chinese parts to maintain, right? Walmart shelves are going to be empty in 2 weeks, by the way. That's one of the latest reports. Get ready for empty shelves in American stores. So get ready for that. And that's why you got to get, and the colonizer are definitely always preparing for that because either because of Western imperial accident goof ups, but usually it's actually they're trying to. This is an accidental goof up that's could cause some problems in the U.S. supply chains. But if you're a colonized person, they weaponize that, right? So cutting you off from food, cutting you off from resources, intentionally taking your resources out and charging you way more to keep you permanently in debt, WTO, IMF, etc., and enslaved to the colonizer, the empire, right? So Americans are going to get a slight taste of what they do to Africa all day, what they do to the Arab world and Asian and the South and Central America world all day. When they run out of stuff on their shelf, you experience a little bit of Syria, right? When 98% of your hospital medications and hospitals shut down because China makes the majority of everything in your hospital and the machines that fix your hospital, then you get a small taste of Syria, right? Where they had no medical, they embargoed all medical imports. People were dying from treatable illnesses and cancers all day. So biggest gold mine in Africa is Kibali mine in DRC. The mine is largely owned by Barrick of Canada. So the reason why so much empire blindness, this environmentalism, veganism, moral progressivity, we're just so ethically good in particularly Toronto but a lot of Canada, is because Toronto is one of the most like pound for pound most resource colonial places in the world, right? Canada is one of the worst in the world. It's actually like for the population size, it's subordinate to the United States, but it's really where the U.S. imperial complex does all of its resource colonialism. Like a lot of the corporate and all the giant investment eldritch terrors like Barrick of Canada, these big resource corporations and funds, they're all stationed. The gold, the silver, the platinum, these big companies, they are headquartered in the Toronto Stock Exchange, right? And so that's why Canada makes a big deal about land acknowledgements, right? Land acknowledgements is part of rebellion blindness, right? So you just go, oh well, we're all guilt free now because we said we're on stolen land, right? Land acknowledge is like going to Mali and Burkina Faso and going, we acknowledge that we're going to kill millions of Burkinabes and Malians and starve them and steal all their gold. Land acknowledgement, and then Barack of Canada is like, okay, thanks for all your stuff. America and France soldiers are going to kill you all and keep you in the mines. But we did a land acknowledgement, right? We did a land acknowledgement. That's why land acknowledgement should be abolished. It's ridiculous. No land acknowledgement without, actual revolutionary change that's actually led by the indigenous people, right? So basically, just like just it's actually better. Just be like, hey, what's up? We're Colonial University. We hate indigenous people. That actually would help more than, oh, we're so sorry that we hurt the people here. All that does is make Canadians and Westerners and so-called progressives increasingly rebellion blind. It just helps them, feel like, it further obfuscates the truth. That's all it does. Anyway, so Captain, let's see, DRC, yeah. So the biggest mine is owned by Paraca Canada. In 2024, they made 686,000 ounces of gold. They made 1.4 billion. They paid 139 million in royalties to DRC. DRC got 2.9. So again, like I said, it's 90, 95, 95, 97, 99%. That's what France takes in Niger. Was taken from Niger's uranium. It was taking a kilogram of uranium from Niger and selling it for 200 times as much to the rest of the world. It was that's what Germany gave to even Bolivia. Germany gave to Bolivia in a decade ago. They wanted 97% of revenue from Bolivia's lithium, and Bolivians would take 3%. It's always about that. That's the colonial cut. The colonial cut is 95 to 99% for the white colonizer world and their in-house slaves and their Uncle Toms that make them seem less racist. And then it's 1% to 5%, just enough to survive for the colonies, right? And that's absolutely still the case to this day. Colonialism never died. Like, neocolonialism is just rebranded colonialism. This is more insidious colonialism. That's all it is. Because you have to deal with the existence of the Soviet Union and now China and the BRICS, so to make it seem like you're not that bad, right? And then that's also why a lot of the investment is to constantly make China and BRICS and Russia and everyone else that's not in the West seem like the most evil thing ever. That is the rebellion blindness as well, right? It's just having this constant bombardment of China's curing cancer at what cost? Oh my God, China's solving climate change, but when China solves climate change, like puppies die or something, right? It's just like nonsense. It's just ridiculous. So just make something up. There's no purpose to people who write for the Washington Post, because that's the kind of stuff that they have been writing, for Western media, USAID, NED, all of this, right? You don't have a purpose in life. All you're doing is trying to stop any actual positive change. You are the empire. You are the written word, spoken word, CNN broadcasted word empire. And that's why those people have to watch a lot of Netflix. They got to watch a lot of Disney Plus, right? Like, after you do the most evil things in the world, you have to pretend you're a good person by watching Star Wars and dreaming that you were a good person, rather than just like writing completely baseless lies about genocide to support balkanizing countries and support genocide, right? And to support empire. So Hollywood is actually very important. Movies and games and these kind of things, these are really important because they keep people. I'm not saying that this show is bad. I'm saying that, like, people have a need to feel purpose in their life, but there is no purpose to the United States, the collective West, and the so-called first free rules-based order. It's empty. It's cancerous. As Uncle Walter Riddy, who's an anti-imperialist Hawaiian who fought for an empire in the Vietnam War, said, Kaho'olawe was bombed and the island has been dying. But we, in all of Hawaii, we are dying a slow cancerous death. But every Westerner is dying a slow cancerous death of their soul. That's why a lot of them gravitate. At least a lot of them gravitating more legitimately towards supporting Palestine and others. But I mean, there's more than that to support. It's not like that's important, and there's other things that are happening in the world as well, and those are all blindnesses to those rebellions, particularly those coming out of places that in Africa, and especially the successful ones, right? One of the rebellion blindnesses is the West likes to put up resistances that are legitimate but are not successful, right? Like if an indigenous person is resisting anything anywhere and it's like 1 or 5 and they're really being harmed really badly by the empire, like, oh, like democracy now loves these kind of things. That's part of the empire blindness, right? Sometimes they do spotlight important things, but they don't want to focus on anything succeeding or has the possibility of succeeding, right? Because if you watch a Democracy Now! Report about a small group of indigenous tribes that are completely being destroyed by Chevron, right? And then one white guy like Steve Van Donziger tried to fight, then he lost. You feel like it helps your middle to upper class stormtrooper self in the collective West, as a air conditioned house living person in New York or California. You feel better about yourself because, well, your people, your system is doing everything it can, right? The reporters are reporting and they're trying to stop this. And now, as long as you show up to one protest, you show up to one protest or a few of them, right? Has Democrats appearing in it, like Nancy Pelosi, right? Then you've done your part. That's part of the rebellion. That's part of the rebellion blindness, because now you have internally absolved your own guilt, having watched that Democracy Now! Report, having shown up to the 50-51. Okay, well, I did my part. I put the pussy hat on. I tried to stop fascism, and empire and fascism is when white conservative, overtly racist and sexist misogynists come out, and I put on Margaret Atwood's Handmaid's Tale costume and do some performance art. And I'm not saying that doesn't do anything ever, but like that, if you believe that is it, and then you like don't get more involved in that and like learn more than that, then the empire has succeeded at keeping itself going. You know what I'm saying? And I speak from somebody who has gone through that process of like being brainwashed by it for most of my from birth till 20s, early 20s, at least a good chunk of my 20s. I was like, oh yeah, if I just vote for Obama, things are gonna get better. I do this progressive. I'll just do this. I was at Occupy, still didn't have my head quite fully screwed on, right? Because the U.S. is very good at brainwashing indigenous empire colonized peoples like us Native Hawaiians, right? But it took some time to figure this stuff out. Anyway, so it's not like the people that it's not like people that show up for a protest are like bad because they showed up for that protest. They should have been smarter. It's a very like Gen X-y. Oh, I always knew it was gonna fail. That's that kind of attitude. That's part of actually Andor. Like, oh, I always knew this rebellion is gonna fail, and so that's it's just kind of cynical. But it's like, which is like, I mean, some people gotta be like, wow, man. Well, I guess we gotta get back to the grind. Sometimes I can be like, oh, well, I knew that wasn't gonna work. Because it ain't my first rodeo. I was at Occupy, supported Black Lives Matter. I supported like 25 protests. I did. I watched people like, Bernie and all these people come and go, and sheepdog people. But like, obviously, the revolutionary optimism requires more than more than that. Even though one thing about Andor is that at least like it shows that like it is like trying on people, and it's hard. Actually doing resistance is like, oh man, it's like not fun. It makes your life hard. You gotta sacrifice your 20s. You can't be partying all the time. You can't live it up. You can't live comfortably as an upper middle class person in America or in the West. Go to parties. Just go to parties. Just work some, and then watch TV shows, party, go on trips, go on vacation. All right, and then show up to one protest twice a year and expect you to resist empire, right? That's not enough. Resisting empire is a sacrifice to your life. You endanger your life, like to actually do it. That's why people that are really in severe circumstances are really the ones that mostly do it, right? Because you can't. There's no nice life for you for a lot of Burkina Faso and for a lot of people in obviously if you're in Palestine, definitely not. But if you're in like Afghanistan, if you're in a lot of African countries or South American countries, right? You don't have the option to just like check your brain out and just go party. You can't just go to brunch. So, that doesn't make it like a guarantee. I mean, you could still become a sellout. You could become a comprador, like the president of Nigeria or the president of Egypt, or the one they replace Patrice Lumumba with, or they replace Gaddafi with, or they replace Thomas Sankara with, or the black American general, right, who's getting paid big bucks. You know the black man the black woman they paid to raise their hand to continue genocide. Who wants to continue genocide? And they put a black person up in front to make America like why did they do that? You got to ask yourself, right? Somebody put that black person there. Why did they do that? To make it harder to attack the United States, to shield itself, right, from that some of the blowback from doing Holocaust for the last 16 months plus, right? Which so it's to try to, it's really hard. It was really hard to dodge that, but now they're trying to put a bit more blindness into people's eyes, right? They go like, well, it was a black person that raised their hand. Isn't it great that we represented? Isn't it great that the United States had a black person raise their hand in the UN to vote to do the worst atrocities in the world? Isn't that great? Anyway, Captain Charlie reaches out to Russia to send weapons and troops to Burkina Faso. So there's a lot of empire blindness when it comes to Russia and the BRICS, and I don't have time to go into all of it. But U.S., why don't you send weapons to support a government that's actually supported by the global South, actual revolutionaries of all kinds, right? And EFF. Sorry, why don't you do that? Oh, that's because you're on the wrong side of history, and you didn't beat the Nazis either. That's the funny thing is a lot of American and Europeans like to talk about the empire is fascism like Hitler. And you didn't beat Hitler. The United States and Europe, you didn't beat Hitler. You told stories about how you did, but actually it was tens of millions of the Soviet Union soldiers, the communists and Russians that beat Hitler. And that's deep historical empire blindness that is necessary to keep the U.S. empire and its vassals and its allies and the historical colonizers of Europe going. They need that deep blindness to that one. And that's why they're going to look at this and they're going to be like, well, Burkina Faso is evil because authoritarianism, something. Authoritarianism, what they called Thomas Sankara, that's what they called authoritarian is what they call everyone. That's what they called Xi Jinping all day long. That's all they do, right? Anytime a country is trying to get out from under actual empire, they call it authoritarian. The leaders call it authoritarian. And then the U.S. has to go, or the U.S. and its allies and NATO got to go overthrow them. This is not actually related, but if you want to live in the future, that's where there's no future for the West and its declining empire. Here is a free housing and accommodation that the president, Captain Ibrahim Traore, is building for the people. Free housing. Okay? So this is what you want to overthrow. You want to stop. Americans would die for free housing. Americans are dying for free housing. They're living on the street and dying early, right? Millions of Americans are homeless on the street or underhoused. The rents are soaring as the U.S. economy is screaming and exploding and only getting worse, right? The president of Burkina Faso this is why the U.S. want to get rid of him, because they're using Africa's resources to build free. This is what Gaddafi did. He gave free apartments to young newlyweds, free K-12, free college. Burkina Faso just gave free college. Namibia just gave free college. So Africa is resisting and rising. They're giving free housing. They're building it, right? They're doing like what North Korea does, right? North Korea, that's another extreme imperial blindness. North Korea is doing what Burkina Faso is doing, which is what Americans wish they had and will never have until they succeed at actually resisting the actual empire, which is their own government, their own ruling class, their own business class, their own oligarchy, which includes all of the West, U.S., Europe, Canada, all of them. None of these places will ever have, a soul, or have any justice, or stop being cancers on the earth and of human spirit, and destroying the environment as well until they do that. But actually, this is exactly what another one is. North Korea gives free housing. There's no mortgages and there are no rents. There's no housing market in North Korea. Any place that any Westerner has ever said, I mean, in power or not, is authoritarian, immediately should be re-examined, right? That's to scrub the myopian film off of your stormtrooper eyeballs. Anytime anyone says authoritarian something or something like that, and not to say that they're a perfect person, but that like there's a reason why they have been called that, and you believe that. France was buying uranium from Niger at 80 cents a kilo, selling to the rest of the world at 200 euros a kilo. So that's actually worse. France was taking 99, right? That is 250 times. 250 times approximately markup of Niger's uranium. Okay? So 99.5% of all of the uranium in Niger is going to power 1/3 of France's light bulbs. It was until they got. That's why France is trying to get back in with the United States into Niger. They just had an attack backing their U.S. Western proxy terrorists. That's why they also launched an image by another empire. Blindness is, it was just internal fighting. It's like U.S. is directly involved between India and Pakistan right now as well. It's just, those brown people are throwing spears at each other of the 21st century. Who knows what happened? And there's a terrorist attack down there. It's probably just Africans and Arabs fighting each other. It's the U.S. giving money and weapons. That's another important one. But all terrorism in the world is basically pervaded by the United States and its allies. And that's, so when because it gives some distance, but it's so big that the U.S. is talking about directly going in with the whole U.S. military going in. That actually would be amazing. That's actually, I should take it back. It's not good. It's not good for the U.S. military to go anywhere. But if the United States and France entire military were destroyed trying to invade like Burkina Faso and all of Africa, while simultaneously trying to invade, while losing to Russia, the collective West already lost to Russia, losing to Yemen, the poorest Arab country, losing to uniting Africa in a billion-person Africa-wide anti-colonial fight against the U.S., France, and all of the West. And then they also tried to start a war in the South China Sea or something ridiculous. And then they completely just blew their home self. Just blow the entire West to smithereens. That would be not good because people would die. But that seems to be some kind of weird thing and unhinged thing that the West is in the U.S. and its allies and like France are thinking about doing. So, Sankara is correct. Those who give us food aid are not actually helping us, but keeping us in this perpetual state of dependency. If you are serious about helping Africans, right, you should do what Char is doing: assist the people with tractors, dams, fertilizer. This is why Africa, they keep them subservient, right? It's by taking away their ability to produce their own food and then exporting whatever resources they have and then re-importing expensive food back from white colonizer countries, right? And that is part of this entire game. That's why Hawaii doesn't produce our own food. That's why we try to produce as much food as we can. We're not a big operation, but we as a Hawaiian people under U.S. illegal colonization, and we're going to be getting, I think, Hawaii, as Africa gets free, we would like to direct Hawaii-Africa cooperation and Hawaii-China cooperation to cut the U.S. All it is doing here is blowing up all of our islands and stealing 99%. Again, 99% of Niger's uranium is being sucked out and sold off or used by France. 99% of Hawaii's tourism, the money is being sucked out and given to Donald Trump, Ritz-Carlton. He owns it. It's given to Goldman Sachs, Turtle Bay Resort, the Hilton Hawaiian Village, the Marriott conglomerate. None of these are Hawaiian owned. None of these are Hawaiian owned. Just like before the Nigerian change, all the uranium wasn't Nigerian owned. Right? And so that's why you can't ethically come to Hawaii. You can ethically buy some of Nigeria's uranium as long as you're buying it straight from somewhere that the money is going to go straight back to help build houses. And 80% of Niger had no electricity. Yet 1/3 of all of the Eiffel Tower, all of Paris's lights were powered. The light bulbs in France were all powered by Niger's stolen uranium. And the vast majority of Niger had no electricity at all. Why are Hawaiians houseless while Americans have 5 timeshares in Hawaii? When Goldman Sachs and all these giant foreign firms, including Japanese, which are colonizers too, own the majority of all of Hawaii's land and all the hotels. So, you see the pattern? Field Marshal Captain Ibrahim Traore is way ahead of his enemies and his Anglo-American slave general. In this video, he is telling his men to be ready for war of high intensities. He said, we are not just fighting terrorists, but a war of decolonization. So Africa, there are millions of Africans that are coming out now. You're not going to see this because you live in a blind empire. All the West and all the Caucasoid world and their comprador token, Twinkies, coconuts, and Oreos are going to be watching Andor, watching space science fictional resistance, while the real resistance is happening this weekend. This week is coming up, right? That's part of the blindness. So, like, I mean, I love watching science fiction. I love making it. I make games and movies. But, like, as I like to say, like, if there is a Silver Spoon brand, it's that, like, cyberpunk and science fiction, and these should not just make you escape reality, but it should reflect back in and point back towards and at least support the games of the Silver Spoon anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist cooperative. All the revenue that when you buy games and you support us goes back into actually doing real rebellion, real resistance change in the world. And so you know what I'm saying? So, like, and so that if there is something to that, that's what we do. Like, when it comes to decolonizers, it's directly anti-U.S. imperialism, you play a Vietnamese communist resistor of the empire. And Neofeud and Neofeud 2, that's definitely a major theme. And that's why every Silver Spoon game sold is part of building resistance, because there's no corporation, there's no capitalist corporation, there's no empire that's sucking my revenue. Like, EA, Activision, and Microsoft are all complicit in global genocides. Like, what every dollar that comes to us is going to, through buying Silver Spoon games, like Neofeud or Decolonizers, goes back into helping us to keep on. There's no capitalist. I do basically the majority of all the game work. And then it just goes to helping us keep making more games. And there are many other indie small studios like that as well. But also specifically also educating and trying to do actual land back, actual decolonization. And so that's another place where, like, the need to feel like you are doing a moral, righteous thing in the world, right? If you only engage in the science fictional version of these, right, that is how the empire wins, right? Because then you slightly fulfill the need, being a soulless corporate drone, right? Moving Excel spreadsheet numbers on while your company is guilty of immiserating billions of Africans and all of the Arab world and Asia, right? And then you watch this Andor, and then you feel good about yourself for a little bit, like, oh yeah, I would totally be that guy fighting the empire. You're totally the guy killing all the. You're totally the guy killing all the Cassian Andors right now, right? With the company you work at. So you're not people say, like, if you want to know what it would be like under fascism, what would you do in Nazi Germany? You're doing it right now. Whatever you think you would be like under an actual fascism, under actual empire, under actual horrible evil, under a horrible authoritarian dictatorship, whatever you thought you would be like, you're doing it right now. Because you're under one. Right? So the more that you, like, just only do escape, then the more you can pretend like that's not who I am, though. This is not who we are. This is not who America is. This is not who the West is. And you can pretend like that's right. The answer is, this is who the West is. Now you must resist it. That's the actual answer. Anyways, actually resist it and support those who are doing the majority of that from the global South and the colonized BIPOC world. Anyway, in this video, telling is been ready to. Yeah, so they are preparing for war. They are preparing for war. The United States is preparing for a major war in Africa. It's like, well, why would they do that? It could be bad. If the United States and Europe lose, well, I should say lose. If Africans succeed, this is big, because it's not just, it's, as I've been talking about. I'm just trying to keep up to date on this. If you follow my streams on Twitch and on this channel, I at least once a month or 2 months, I've been talking about this, right? I've been sharing a lot of it on social media, but, like, if this expands, Africa is the richest continent on the earth. It has all the key resources. It has all the key minerals in large quantities. It has more than enough it has also, it's all arable land. It's been forcefully kept under agriculturalized to keep Africa enslaved to European food aid, as Thomas Sankara pointed out. Hananike Trask was an important figure in Hawaiian liberation, Hawaiian anti-imperialist, Hawaiian sovereignty struggles. She was, like, directly was a student of, or followed in the path of Thomas Sankara, and, like, learned a lot from him, right? And so if the West, the U.S. and the oldest colonizers, Europe, if they lose Africa, then they are completely done for. They've already lost much of Asia. Look at BRICS. Look at the reorientation. China is cutting very close deals with America's most important vassals, Japan and South Korea. Right? Asia is orienting away from the U.S. Even Europe is turning against the U.S. to a large extent. Now, they can't really fully turn because if they lose Africa, they also lose their colonial privileges. Right? So Europe is in a weird place right now because they're all in fighting. It's actually great because if the U.S. and Europe are crashing their Star Destroyers into each other, it's going to make it easier for Africa to resist. But the answer is U.S. and Europe they cannot fully sever because Europe still relies trillions of dollars for German houses, for French middle class and upper class, for the British upper class and middle class, Italian, whatever remains of them. They rely on stealing the resources of Africa. I mean, Europe, especially Africa. The U.S. steals from everybody. And the U.S. is trying to help because the U.S. wants to keep that going, right? France has the largest by acre and the sea territory. France actually has the largest empire in the world, France. And that's where this is popping off. So there is a good chance the U.S. will, with Europe, invade like they did NATO, but even bigger. They might invade all of whatever Africa they can get into, right? Just to do what they did to Gaddafi, which is to torture him to death, to destroy that country, to make an example. There is a good chance the U.S. will try, because if they lose, it could really be the end for a real Earth empire, imperial complex, and that's really great. And I mean, again, I can't say like I hope that I don't really want people are going to die. A lot of people are going to die if the U.S. and France invade. But as long as the people of Africa and all of the people that are actually on the side of resistance and not just like watching TV shows made by rich Americans and Westerners, and they're actually paying attention to the empire too, the real empire on the earth as well. As long as that is true, then there's a very high probability that that the U.S. and the collective West and actual empire of the earth will fail. And that will be really great. It'll be really great for the world. And this would be a major push to actually getting what Luke Skywalker did at the end of Star Wars Episode 4. Right? Which is the fruits of the labors of Cassian Andor and Princess Leia, R2-D2, C-3PO, Han Solo, reluctantly, and then later on, like Han is like the Western, like, oh, I don't know if I want to do this empire, fighting this empire stuff. I think I'm just gonna make some money. And then by the end, he's like, okay, I'll bring my Millennium Falcon. Hey kid, that was 1 in a million shot, good shot. Like that is the role that Americans and French and British and Canadians might be able to play at some point, is to kind of like come in at the last second and help the empire resist the actual rebellion resistors. That's like African people and Central South American indigenous people, and the people of the Arab world, and obviously Palestine and Yemen, and that's the role they can play, but not centering themselves as the main character of the story, because that's and on a global scale. Inside your own country, maybe you want to get on that maybe a little faster. But anyways, that's good. It's time to go. Thank you so much for watching. This is a Silver Spook stream. And if you want to support us for the education we try our best to do, education and agitation, and sometimes I'm sure it's somewhat frustrating for some people to hear that, but I'm not here to tell you tell you nice lies. You can watch other channels for that. At least for the second half or the last third, I gotta at least give some of the reality. But you can help us at ko-fi.com/silverspook, and also you can help us out if you'd like to support the Silver Spook Cooperative. You can help us out at patreon.com/Neofeud. I am obviously currently still finishing up. And Neofeud 2 is a game. Actually, I'm thinking of calling it Neofeud 2. It's either going to be Neofeud 2 Revolutionators or like Neofeud 2 Empire Falls or something like that. It does deal directly with a space empire is directly involved. So that it has a lot of Star Wars references in it, more so than Neofeud 1, I would say. But if you want to help us finish this game, I'm voice acting. I'm about 3/5 to 2/3 done editing the main character's voice acting and adding the lines to the game. So that'll be 30,000 of 140,000 words That's approximately 150 pages or half a novel worth of the script done. Neofeud 2 is about 2 novels worth of script. So if you are interested in voice acting, we're still accepting voice actor auditions. Message me on silverspookgames@gmail.com. Find me on Discord, any social media site, and say, Silverspook, I'm interested in voice acting. You don't need to be a professional voice actor per se. I mean, if you do have, some theater skills of some kind, the quality of microphone, we're not being super, like we it's just a huge script, and I want to get it voice acted, but we're not a mega studio, so you don't need to be a professional voice actor. Actually, it's actually more important that you're kind of into science fiction and cyberpunk, and if you know about the Silverspook games, that actually helps because Neofeud 2 is a very complicated. It's not like your average TV show, movie, or cartoon. You know what I'm saying? Or video game. It's pretty complex material. So the more, actually, I say more important than just like being good at making voices, although acting helps, is like being able to like confidently say very complex science fiction words. If you are similar politics, that helps as well because then you understand where the characters are coming from. So that's actually for Neofeud 2. That's actually more important. I feel like to me that's actually more important. That people like understand kind of like where we're coming from, right? Which is I can't really say exactly in this moment, but if you're following so I'm actually trying to cast in-house more too, so I get more people like that because that's kind of what I noticed. With Neofeud 1, it was the same way. Some people had like better quality microphones. Some people had more acting chops and more voice acting experience, but I didn't always choose those people. I chose some people that had not as good quality microphones, not as quiet and soundproof studios, and not as they're not necessarily all as experienced at acting. So everybody had at least maybe a little acting experience, but they understood what Neofeud was trying to do, which was to make an anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist, satirical like take on all of the cyberpunk world. It's a very meta game, and it's like very like it's very philosophical, intellectually involved. It has like large paragraphs. It's a little bit more like Disco Elysium, right? Disco Elysium is different from like just watching like SpongeBob, or it's probably not the best example, you know what I'm saying? But it's different from like just watching like Sonic the Hedgehog. Like somebody just watched that, and it's like a mainstream Hollywood movie, right? It's more involved. You know what I'm saying? It's more literary. Okay, so that's the kind of people that I'm more looking for. Not to say like you have to be like a PhD in film and literature and science fiction to apply, but that's one thing I'm noticing because like we're getting a lot of auditions in, and it's hard because you got to be able to pronounce weird words confidently, understand what is the gist of it, right? But as if it's kind of like a little bit like Star Wars. You got to say like on Alderaan we're having an attack on the Corellian ships. You got to be saying lots of science fiction words, but you have to convey the emotion at the same time, despite not knowing what those words mean. You know what I'm saying? So, long story short, don't worry if you don't get all that. Just send a message and we'll let figure it out. But if you are that kind of person, let me know because we're not quite. I'm not done casting the whole thing yet. But I got 85 parts to cast. Okay, so I knew it was gonna take a bit longer. Also, you can help us out at the Silverspook Cooperative to keep on doing this restorational land back work and growing our own food. I'm gonna have some more video or pictures of our new crops that we're growing and our battle with the chicken. The chickens just scratch up a bunch of the dry area. It's happened before. It'll catalog the trials and tribulations on decolonizing and getting food sovereignty for our native Hawaiian Silverspook Cooperative here. Anyways, you can also help us out when you become a Silverspook Patreon. You get access to the Silverspook Discord and the Silverspook University, which is over 1,000 hours of all the content that we have ever produced, categorized according to topics from Hawaiian history, as well as videos and threads, true world history, Asia focused, Africa focused, America's Turtle Island focused, economics, true economics, race and gender focused, analysis, the West, dismantling imperium. Like, did you ever want to go to college but you don't have like $200,000 worth of debt you don't want to be in? The Silverspook University, you can get all this for $1 or any amount when you become a Patreon patron. And anyways, and it just categorizes everything we've ever done according to topics. Not everything in the last recent history, but we've been streaming for like 8+ years. So, and putting out this kind of material, but I'm not employed at any university. I don't plan to, because I don't want to support empires and genocide. So, which is what universities in the West do. How's it going at Yale, by the way? Oh, that's right. Right, they're criminalizing all the Palestine protesters. That's what they're doing at Yale. Okay, anyways, you can also help us out at grabbing the games, like I said, on Steam. It was recently on sale, but if you don't have $14.99, you can always wish list it, tell all your friends about it.
Illuminati created us.
Also, quick shout out to Old Skies. Since we're looking at Steam, Old Skies is a game released by Dave Gilbert. Why Jedi Games inspired me, like Techno Babylon Primordia, to make the indie adventure game Neofeud in the same engine that Why Jedi makes their games like Old Skies in. Why does it say coming spring 2025? Because it's already here. Anyway, but yeah, it is here, and you can grab that as well. That doesn't support us. That's a shout out for our friend Why Jedi Games. And also on itch.io you can get games for Windows and Mac and Linux, including Neofeud. Neofeud is a game that you can get, and it does support us. And maximum revenue comes to us when you buy it on itch, and it is on sale there. And of course, you can also get Decolonators, which is a game that is directly about fighting Empire, historical Empire, specifically Vietnam versus the United States, and you play on the side of Vietnam in a retro Contra style shooter. And of course, you can also get Pigeon with Gun, which is a game where you play a pigeon, a version of the UHC shooter, fighting tons of cops and billionaires. In a comedy retro shooter. And of course, Woman is a book by Holly, who is raised in right-wing evangelical Christian culture that critiques the world of that world from the perspective of Mary in the Bible. You can follow us at Red Note, Little Red Note, Shaongshu, which is a non-Western, non-Empire moderated social media platform. Amazing. You can follow. Just go to Shaongshu, and you can just search Silver Spook, and you should be able to find it. I have this one post, and it has so many. This post is like so many likes. This is like one of my most interactive with things over here. There's like somebody said, "Ask Americans, do you think drug dealers should be sentenced to death?" And I said, "Yes, the entire U.S. government would be sentenced to death in this case." And it has like 609. That has like 609 likes. Is amazing. So that's how we know China is anti-imperial, because they love anti-imperialist Native Hawaiian indigenous struggle and humor. So that's how we know. Anyways, you can also follow at Silver Spook Games at wandering.shop and at Silver Spook Games at mastodon.social, and of course we're on Blue Sky and on Twitter at Silver Spook Guy. Also, I made a new Instagram. There's so many platforms. It's too much for me nowadays. But we're also on Silver Spook Hui is a new account I made just to comment on a roasted post specifically about what we're doing as Indigenous Hawaiian cooperative here, including like the Aina work, the working the land. Commenting from a Hawaiian perspective on the political topics, and the situation that we're in, and what we're doing at the Silver Spook Cooperative, like, and including like physically. And we also have the Silver Spook, as I said, Silver Spook Guy. Silver Spook Guy is where you can follow for on Twitter. Silver Spook Games minus the E in silver, and of course you can also follow Holly at Allergic to Blue. Holly is of course partner here with myself, married to myself, and in Hawaii. And Holly's also sharing important information like that. So very important for everybody to know, because as I made a video about this last week, we're still in a lot of very bad virus situations. So, all right. Anyways, thanks to all of our Patreon patrons for your ongoing support. Without your support, it's hard to keep doing this. What's up, Grant? Thanks for stopping by. Sorry, I don't always pay attention to the chat too much in this stream, but thanks to our patrons, and until next time, keep mirror shades polished, be excellent to each other. Keep resisting the Empire. I'm not saying Andor is bad. I'm not saying that the show. I mean, it's actually pretty. We're probably gonna watch that whole thing. It's pretty entertaining. It's got Diego Luna. It's got Stellan Skarsgård. We haven't watched a lot of Star Wars recently. The last one was Acolyte. And it's popular now, so I hope that the video gets viewed. But anyway, thanks to all the Patreon patrons, and until next time, keep mirror shades polished, be excellent to each other, resist those empires, don't be empire blinded, and we'll see you next time.